All right, everybody, so welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. So today we're going to be talking about my top 5 baits for November, so stay tuned, there's something you don't want to miss. All right, so first off, guys, I want to say if the video helps you at all, make sure to like and subscribe. I got you covered when it comes to anything bass fishing, and it helps me out a whole lot. It's something super easy that you can do that helps me tons. Also, if you have any questions, comment down below. You got anything to add, maybe one of your favorite baits for November, share it with the community. That's what this community is all about, is about learning about bass fishing and us being able to go out on the water and enjoy what little time we do have on the water. Also, all baits and gear will be linked down in the description, so you can click the description. Everything will be linked. You can click it, take you straight to Tackle Warehouse or whatever I talk about. It'll take you straight there. You can add it to your cart if you need it, and then purchase that product. Just make sure if you click on my sponsors links to use my codes if you make a purchase, and that way it helps me out a whole lot, and you get some money off, up to 20%. So, first bait I want to talk about is one of my favorites, spinnerbait. Yeah. So November is still a great time to run a spinnerbait, but I'm going to do something a little different because we're talking about slowing down in November. It's one of that's a bad word. That's a horrible word. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth, but you're going to have to slow down, okay? But so doing that, I'm kind of going to use the blades, not only for vibration, but to help me slow down. And one of the ways that I do that is with a Willow Colorado blade spinnerbait. I typically like the War Eagle. It's got a little bit bigger blades on it. So, you know, it puts out more vibration in the water, but also makes me slow down a lot more, because if you reel it too fast, it's going to, you know, come all the way up to the surface and break the surface. So, but I typically going to stick to that 3/8 ounce. I'm typically going to go with the gold this time of year. I don't know if it's a confidence thing or what, but it seems like the gold is going to be a huge key every fall. Like right now, we hadn't had any rain or anything like that, but the water here it's a little dingy, okay? But the gold seems to be the best for that little bit of dingy water. Not necessarily stained and not necessarily muddy, but, you know, just kind of like dingy water. It's not clean, it's not clear, it's kind of that in between. But typically I'm going to use this on a strong cadence. You know, keep that bait as low as I can in the water column, bring it through at that, you know, that steady, strong cadence. Pop it a little bit, but nothing too crazy. I'm not trying to make this bait act real erratic. Remember, the water temperatures are dropping, so, you know, the metabolisms of the fish are going down, and therefore the bait fish and stuff like that, same thing happens to them. They all slow down. But, you know, providing this bait in the strike zone longer is going to get you a lot more bites. So once you figure that out, hang out there. I like using a 7-foot medium heavy action rod. This is a rod by Thunderhawk Lures. This is the Limit 5 series, $100 rod. Really love this rod, especially the short handle on it. I'm a short guy, got short arms. I don't like that handle bumping into my side. I don't like it bumping into my forearm or the crease of my elbow. So, you know, if you're looking for a real affordable rod, check them out. And you can use Posey 20. You know, you'll get 20% off your purchase. So, you know, you're gonna get it for a lot less than $100. But either way, 7:3 to 1 gear ratio. Real, I like a little bit higher speed gear ratio. I'm not sacrificing too much torque, not sacrificing, you know, really anything. Not too high, not too low. I got that power, I got torque, I got speed, I got everything I need. 15-20 pound test. It all depends on what you're comfortable with. This one I've got 20 pound test. Now the next bait I want to talk about is a lipless crankbait, also called a rattle trap. A lot of people like to call them rattle trap, but you know, that lipless crankbait style bait. There's two that I like to run. Not a whole lot of companies do it. Thunderhawk is one of the companies that do it, so I highly suggest their stuff. But you know, they got that silent and they got that lipless version, plus this right here, it's got that 360 barrel swivel inside the bait, so this allows the fish to get hung up a lot when they're swiping at it. So, you know, you're not really sacrificing those hang-ups on the fish. Plus it sits heavy nose down, so I can bring it through cover. That cold front comes through, those fish push up close to docks or, you know, wood cover or anything like that. This bait just comes through stuff. It reminds me a lot of the War Pig as far as like not getting hung up. So I'm very, very fond of this bait, but I'm gonna go with a silent version, which is one thing that a lot of companies, I don't really think any other company does it anymore, but Thunderhawk does. But the silent lipless crankbait, I'm gonna go when that water's clean, clear, or slightly murky like it is today. If it's slightly murky, I'm gonna go with that gold color once again, okay? when I'm throwing the silent. Now, if you get in that muddy to stained water, I'm going to throw the rattle inversion. That tight wiggle action is going to be the key throughout the winter months, throughout you know, late fall, stuff like that. That's the reason you see a lot of people, and you'll see in my videos as you watch my top baits videos every month. But it's going to get to the point where most of the people are using flat-sided crankbaits and stuff like that because the fish like that tight wiggle more than that wobble action this time of year for whatever reason. I think it's just how the bait fish seem to move in the water and it looks a little bit more natural. But I'm throwing this on the 7-foot Tyco series rod. This is their crankbait rod. I'm going with a slower gear ratio, 6/4 to 1 gear ratio reel, and I'm running 15-pound test on this because I'm typically going to be putting this in heavy cover situations or fishing open flats and stuff like that. So, you know, typically stumps and stuff like that where I fish, but I'm throwing that slower gear ratio so I'm not running that bait too fast, and I get a lot of power from this. So if I throw this bait up close to a laydown or something like that, there's a fish in it, I can get that fish out quickly, okay? There's no hossing around or them hossing me around or anything like that, especially with that 360 barrel swivel. So, you know, you don't really have to worry about the fish throwing the bait nearly as much. I mean, every fish that I don't know if I've had a fish throw this bait since I've been using their lipless crankbaits. I can't say without 100% certainty, but as far as I remember, I haven't had a single fish throw this bait. So, you know, your hang-up ratio is going to go up a whole lot. I use lipless all the time. Now, another bait that I want to talk about, this is just a great bait year-round, but you know, that's a jig. This is like a casting style jig. It's got that flat head so you can skip it really good. A lot of times these fish are going to be pushing up under docks and stuff like that, that's in these creeks and pockets and stuff like that. Being able to skip a jig is going to be great. But you know, this is the Hags jig. Everything will be linked down in the description as always, and I'm putting a Yum Christy Crawl on the back of it. I'm cutting that thing in half, sliding it up on there, buttoning it up, but I'm typically going to be using those natural colors, those brim and crawfish colors, you know, even though this has got some orange and stuff like that and a lot of green and red flake in the Christy Crawl itself. This can kind of go both ways, whether you're talking about, you know, trying to entice fish that are feeding on brim or crawfish. It doesn't really matter if you get around a fish that's feeding on brim or crawfish, either or, they're probably going to bite this jig. But I'm typically, I can pop this jig as far as like stroking the jig, but I'm not going to be doing it super aggressive this time of year. I'm going to be doing more of a lift. So instead of doing that pop, I'm going to be doing that lift, reel, shake, slow drag. Or one of the biggest things that I like doing with these casting jigs, I'll throw this bait out there and I'll keep my rod tip up at about 1 o'clock and I will crawl that bait across the bottom. That tail's going to be kicking, this bait's going to be bouncing. It's got that 90-degree line tie, so it's easy to swim. You're not going to get hung up near as much. But these jigs are super affordable. I've become a big fan of them. They're hand-tied tungsten jigs, which is great. And that's the crazy part. I mean, these jigs are like, I think they're like $3 a piece. They're not much at all. But I bought some to try out, and the company sent me a lot more to try, and I've really fell in love with these baits. Now my setup, it's that 7'3" medium heavy action rod, medium heavy fast action rod. That's just what I feel comfortable using as a jig. I can make long casts, I can take up a lot of line, especially with that 7'3" to 1 gear ratio reel, 15-pound fluorocarbon. The 15-pound fluorocarbon is going to eliminate a lot of stretch, so your hook sets on those long casts, it's not going to be an issue. Easy to skip. The 15 pounds kind of like that in between. It's controllable, but it's not so thick where it's not controllable, if that makes sense. 20-pound can be very irritating to skip because it's such a thick line, and I'm not paying like $60 for 150 yards of a line. I run Seaguar Red Label. Use whatever you prefer, whatever you like, they're all good. Now this bait is a bait that I absolutely love when that water gets stained or muddy. And when I say stained, I'm talking, you know, pretty well stained. That's a Z-Man chatterbait, okay? This is the jackhammer. I've heard the Evos work really well. I haven't used them personally yet. I plan on making a purchase some of them, but Hags actually come out with a bladed jig. I want to try theirs first before I get the Evos, because the Hags ones are cheaper than the Evos and cheaper than the jackhammers. But either way, you know, I'm throwing this jackhammer. I'm throwing it in that fire crawl color, and I've got that what is it called, the freeloaders by Rapala on there, the spring crawl color, whatever it's called. But you know, I'm throwing that matching crawfish color in that stained to muddy water, because a lot of times, especially in your shallow lakes like Gunnersville and stuff, you're going to get a lot of wind in November. The weather's changing dramatically. so those shallow lakes are going to muddy up. Other places you may be getting a lot of rain, so you got a lot of that rainwater coming into your lake, and the water's going to muddy up or stain up pretty good. And that fire crawl color it's just super easy for those fish to see. It puts out tons of contrast. Okay, you can also add like a green pumpkin trailer to it, and then it kind of tones it down a little bit, makes it a little bit more natural if you're fishing kind of not clear water, but kind of clean. You know, it's kind of like, it's not stained, but it's not muddy, but it's not clear either. But you can throw like a green pumpkin freeloader on there or something. I just like the freeloader. It gives it a great action. But you know, the main thing is this bait puts out tons of vibration. You can run it on fluorocarbon or braided line. Just if you haven't watched my chatterbaits video, check that out, because I go into depth about why I use certain chatterbaits for whatever reason. But you know, it's a super in-depth video. But this right here, this is a 7'1" medium heavy fast action rod. It's an all-purpose rod. This was made by Impulse Lures, or Impulse Fishing Rods. I had this rod for years. Lance's Fight Rod is one of my favorite rods in the world. But you know, that medium heavy rod is typically what I'm going to go with, because I'm not making super long casts with this or anything like that. I'm typically skipping it under docks, bringing it through grass, rip wrap, stuff like that. 15-pound fluorocarbon 7:3 to 1 gear ratio reel. Not too much, not too little. I found that perfect cadence for me on most of my setups with a 7:3 to 1 gear ratio. So if you see this color reel right here, it's always going to be a 7:3 to 1 gear ratio. Now the last one that I want to talk about is one that I always talk about that you need to be running, you know, from really year round. It's just a great option to cover a lot of water and catch a lot of fish, and that's a swim bait. So this is the Strike King Rage Swimmer. I like the Rage Swimmer because these ribs are pointed forward, which in return creates more resistance, puts a little bit more vibration in the water. This tail is kicking pretty aggressively, but not so much where it's like the 2.75 where it's just crazy everywhere. And then the 1/4 ounce swim bait if I need to keep that bait closer to the surface and slow it down, or 3/8 ounce if I need to get that bait deeper and then slow that bait down to that deeper depth zone to get more strikes and stay in the strike zone. Super simple setup. That's about the only head that I run on the 3.75 inch. There is another one that I do run, and I've actually got it on order, but I can't remember if it's a War Eagle swim bait head or Eagle Claw, something like that, but it's super affordable swim bait head. I'll link it down in the description also. I've got them on order. I'm out of them. But either way, either or, whatever you feel comfortable using. But this is one of the big ones that you're going to catch a lot of fish, and you're going to catch big fish on these swim baits this time of year, whether you're fishing points, creeks, or whatever. The only downside is you do get hung up a lot if you're throwing this around cover. So that's kind of where, when I was talking about the swim jigs and stuff, that's kind of where a swim jig would come in. So, you know, you could maybe put it on a swim jig or put on a weedless swim bait head, whatever you prefer. But I typically, if I'm going to go to a weedless swim bait head, I'm just going to go ahead and grab the swim jig. It's basically the same thing, but with a skirt on it. But either way, I'm throwing this on the 7'3" medium heavy fast action Tyco series rod by Thunderhawk. It's a very expensive rod, but I love it. I love it. The sensitivity's amazing, but you know, it's one of those things where it's so sensitive that you kind of have to get used to it. You know, when you get into those $300, $400, $500, $600 rod range, they're very sensitive. There's a reason that those rods they cost that much. You're getting a lot out of those rods. These are super tough. I've sent these into the trolling motor by accident and not broke them, just bent the eye a little bit, straighten it out, and it's good to go. But you know, you're getting a lot more out of these rods. But if you're used to, like me, throwing $100 to $159 rods, you're going to feel everything. And it's going to take you a little bit of time to get used to that sensitivity. Once you do, your game is up, okay? But either way, 7.5 to 1 gear ratio, loose speed spool. This is Classic Pro, 15-pound fluorocarbon. I just like that 7.5 to 1 gear ratio. It's a little bit faster than the 7.3 to 1, but it's not so fast that I can't catch up to that bait if the fish hit them from behind. So either way, guys, if the video helped you at all, make sure to like, subscribe. It helps me out a whole lot. Also, comment down below if you have any questions or anything you want to add, or if you just want to talk fishing. I love hearing from you guys. Also, make sure to check out my sponsor links and stuff. It helps me out a whole lot. It provides gas, tackle, all that stuff that I need to do my job out here and relay what I need to relay to you guys. But either way, guys, Colton Posey Fishing merch store is open. $25 shipped to your door, hats, shirts, whatever. Don't make much off of them, but you know, if you want to get you a cool t-shirt or anything like that, check that out. But either way, guys, I really appreciate it. I'll see you next time.